Well, good morning. Welcome. For those who don't know me, my name is Sally Poyzer. I'm one of the pastors at our West campus, so it's so good to be able to come here and to be able to share with you this message. And if I haven't met you before, please come up to me afterwards and say hi. I would love to meet you. So I believe this is the start of a new series. Is that correct for you guys? And this is on Is That You, God? About positioning ourselves to hear God's voice. And I'm excited to be sharing this morning because God wants to talk to us. And it's important that we can hear him. He's talking to us all the time. He's talking to us about his love for us, his love for other people, his heart for us. And I find a lot of people say to me that they actually can't hear God's voice, or they don't know if God is speaking to them, maybe in a particular situation. Or some people say, I don't know if I've ever heard God speak to me before. And if that's you this morning, or if you haven't heard from God for a long time, or you're not sure if it's God, I'm really hoping today's message is going to be particularly encouraging for you today. When people say that they can't hear God's voice, what I tend to find is they're usually saying that they're needing wisdom or direction about a particular situation, and they can't judge what God is saying. They don't know what God is saying to them about that. But God actually wants to give us wisdom. He wants to give us direction. Proverbs 2:6 says, "For the Lord grants wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." Isaiah 30:21 says, "Your own ears will hear him." I think this is really cool. It says, "Right behind you a voice will say, 'This is the way you should go,' whether to the right or to the left." And that's God. He wants to speak to us. He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. He knows the past, present, and future. He knows every single person. And so he actually knows in every situation what is the best thing for us to do. And for us, we can get caught up in emotion. We can get caught up in fear and worry. We can get caught up in our own ambition. And sometimes it's really hard for us to know the right thing to do. But God always knows the right thing to do. And he wants to tell us. And so maybe as I'm sharing this morning, maybe there's something that you are wanting God's direction on. Maybe there's something that you need to hear from God about. Maybe there's a decision you need to make in relation to your work or to study, or with your kids. You're just trying to work out, how do I handle this particular situation with my kids, or just how do I handle my kids, full stop. Maybe there's some challenges in your marriage right now and you're just not sure how to handle it or how to approach it. Maybe there's some financial troubles you're going through. Maybe there's some health issues and you're not sure what the next step is. Can I encourage you? God wants to speak to you. And I hope that what I'm sharing today will help you be able to hear from him today about that particular situation. You know, it's not surprising that people find it hard to hear from God, especially when they're new Christians. I think it's a little bit like when we have a baby. Michael, you've just had a baby, beautiful little Isla. And you know, babies can't understand the words that we're speaking to them. She doesn't understand when you speak to her, but she can hear the tone of your voice. She can hear the love that you have for her. And that's all babies can pick up, is on our tone. And then as they get a little bit older, they begin to be able to distinguish words like their name, or mum, or dad, or ball, or duck, or, you know, plane, or whatever it is that they're interested in. They begin to pick out individual little words. And then over time, that becomes sentences. And then the beautiful day when you can say to your kids, you know, go pack up your toys, and they actually understand you. And even more exciting when they actually go and do it. It doesn't happen super often, but every now and then they listen, they hear, they understand, and then they go and do it. And it's a beautiful thing. And as they get older, you can begin to have conversations with them. You can have whole interactions with them. You talk, they talk, you know, you talk, and they can actually hear you and understand. And then you get to a point where you're adults and you can sit and listen for 30 minutes to someone preach a sermon. Like, this is incredible. And you only doze off a few times. Like, it is amazing how we develop in our understanding and our ability to listen. And I think that's like us as Christians. You know, when we are first baby Christians, often we can only hear the tone of God's voice. Like, I often hear people say when they're first in that journey to discovering God, or first Christians, that they can just sense God's peace, or they can sense God's love, or maybe they come into church and they just can't stop crying during the worship and they don't know why. But they're just really sensing God's presence. They know he's talking to them and they can feel him, but they can't pick out any individual words. And then as they grow in that relationship with God, they can hear maybe, "I love you. I forgive you. Nope, don't do that. No. Yes. They can hear those little words, those little instructions, and they can sense God's voice. And as you grow in your walk with God, you can start to hear more clearly, more extended things and more detailed things, and have greater confidence that that's what God is actually saying. And the only way we can get to that point of really being able to clearly understand what God is saying in a particular situation is time. And I don't mean length of time, because just like, I don't know, you're probably the same as me. I've got people that I've known for decades because I met them at a party of a mutual friend once years ago, and then every now and then I see them at another party, or I see them at a wedding, or I see them at things. And so I know their name and they know my name, and we might have a 5-minute conversation. And I've known them for decades, but I don't really know them. I've never been to their house. I've never been to my house. We don't have a deep or close relationship. And then yet, sort of conversely, you can get a couple that's been dating for maybe 2 or 3 months, and they're spending every day together and they're talking on the phone constantly, and they can know each other far better in a really short period of time than someone who's known someone for decades. So it's not about length of time, it's about amount of time. The more time we spend with God, the easier it will be for us to hear his voice and to be able to recognise it. So I can't give you a shortcut for time this morning. If you're new in your journey and you haven't spent much time with God, it is going to be a little bit harder for you to hear specific words. You might be able to hear the tone of God's voice or a little word here or there, and that's just a time thing. But I can't give you a shortcut for time, but I can give you some simple strategies that we can do to position ourselves to hear God's voice. I have 2 children. I have a 11-year-old son and a nearly 17-year-old daughter. And I think it's a really good illustration of a parent, like me, trying to talk to my children. I have so many good things to tell my children. I have so much wisdom and knowledge that I would love to pass on to them. They often don't want to receive that wisdom or that knowledge, but I have it. I have so much, I can see the things they're doing. I can see the consequences that are coming, and they don't necessarily want to hear it, but I want to pass that on. And when I have direction I need to give to my children too, and instructions, they definitely don't want to hear that one either. But I need to be able to communicate that to them, and I want to communicate that to them. But they often do not hear me. And I want to go through, there's many reasons why they do not hear me, but I want to go through some simple reasons why. Sometimes they can't hear me because they're just too far away. They're in a different part of the house, they're outside, and I'm in the kitchen, and maybe I'm making dinner and I'm calling out, dinner's ready, and they actually can't hear me because they're too far away. Or maybe they're really close. We've recently renovated the back of our house, and now I have my kitchen's right here, and then right there, we have a little beanbag room with a TV. And so my son can be sitting right there on the beanbag while I'm cooking dinner, and I can be trying to talk to him, and he can't hear me because the TV's on. And he's watching that TV. Even though he's physically close, he is distracted by the noise in the room and by what he's watching. Or maybe it's iPads or Nintendo Switches or, earbuds or whatever it is, phones, devices, or even just other conversations or things that they're busy doing. And it can be hard for him and for my daughter to hear me because of distraction. Sometimes my kids can't hear me because they're overwhelmed. I don't know if you've ever had this sort of a conversation with someone, and it's not a conversation because they are so angry. They are so angry, or they are so sad. They are really sad and upset and stressed and worried, or maybe they've hurt themselves and they are just bawling their eyes out with hurt. But you're trying to talk to them, and it's like there's nothing there because there's so much emotion going on in their face, in their heart, in their mind, in all of them. And I think that can be a reason why they can't hear. You can try and talk to them, but you're not getting anywhere. Another reason we sometimes can't hear, and this is probably a teenage thing, is because of the closed doors. Any parents of teenagers identify with this. When the doors start to close, and if you've ever tried to have a conversation through a closed door, you'll know how hard it is to hear someone when there is a closed door in between you. Maybe they can't hear you because they're just not interested. We have a bit of selective hearing going on, that they don't want to hear what you have to say. I find that with my kids, sometimes they know that I'm talking to them. They can see that I'm talking to them, but they think I'm probably going to be telling them that they need to go have a shower and go brush their teeth, or they need to, stop doing what they're doing and come help set the table or do dishes. And so I can't hear you. I had this last night. I said to my son 3 times, he was playing on, I don't know, the iPad or Xbox or something. And I came in 3 times and said, you need to go have your shower and go to bed. And like the 3rd time, I'm like, Rocky. And he's like, I didn't hear you. I had my headphones on and I could see that you were talking, but I couldn't hear what you were saying. And then you walked out of the room. Oh, so I didn't know. I'm like, dude, you knew I was talking to you. But he didn't want to hear it because he knew I was going to say, it's time for bed. And other times, my kids don't hear me because they're just too busy talking to hear what I have to say. Again, have you ever had a conversation with a child like that? They want to tell you blah, 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 and you're like, and you're trying to get a word in, and you just can't get a word in because they're just too busy talking. So there's some of the reasons why our kids can't hear us. And they're the same reasons, I think, sometimes that we can't hear God. God is always speaking to us. He wants us to hear him. There's a really good little book, it's not a long book, called God Conversations. If you're passionate about hearing God's voice, I actually really recommend this book. I found it very interesting, lots of really practical examples. It's written by a woman named Tanya Harris. And in the book, God Conversations, she says, God is far more committed to speaking to his people than his people are committed to hearing him answer. He wants to be heard, and he wants to be heard clearly. God is not a distant God that's sitting up in heaven and not interested in our lives, and that's why we can't hear him. He's there talking to us all the time. He has things he wants to say to us. He wants to give us information. He wants to give us knowledge. He wants to give us wisdom. He wants to give us direction. He wants to give us guidance. But a lot of the time, we're just too busy to listen. He's more committed to speaking to us than we are committed to hearing from him. So if we go back to those examples I used of a parent trying to talk to a child, sometimes we don't hear God because we are too far away. Now, I think we can be too far away for a couple of reasons. One, it might be we're a little bit like the lost son. Jesus told the parable of a son who said to his father, give me my share of the inheritance now. And then he went off to a foreign land and spent it all and just blew his money. He deliberately walked away from his father. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes we deliberately walk away from God. Maybe we're angry at God. Maybe we're hurting. Maybe we've lost our faith and we've actually deliberately walked away from God. But I think for most people, usually we're too far away because we've just drifted. Like it's not an intentional thing. It's not like we're going, oh, I don't want you, God. I want to leave the house. I want to go to a foreign country and do my own thing. We've just kind of drifted. We've got busy. We've got distracted. Life is crazy. And we've just drifted slowly away from God. Whatever the reason is of why you have drifted, I encourage you, like the son who woke up one day and is like, what am I doing? I am living in poverty when I could be with in my father's house and living in blessing. And he just came home. And the beautiful thing was, I love in this story, the father actually didn't chase after the son. He didn't try and force the son to come home. He let the son make his own choices, but he watched that road. And the minute he saw his son coming home, he ran towards him and embraced him with open arms. And that's how God is with us. It says in James 4:4, come close to God and God will come close to you. He's always there. He hasn't moved. He's still standing in the kitchen waiting for us. Like we might have drifted outside or to another room. He's there cooking us a good meal. He has something good for us. But we have to choose to come and receive. And the minute he comes towards us, he comes running towards us to welcome us back. I think sometimes we don't hear God because we are distracted. There is so much going on in our lives with work, study, family, friends, social life. And if any time you are at all bored, we have this device that's like attached to our hand that can give us distraction anytime we want it. It's so easy. There's a story in 1 Kings chapter 19 about the prophet Elijah. And he gets to this place where he is just done. He is over it. He's been serving God. He's been stepping out and preaching about God, even though he's being like a lone voice. He feels like he's a lone voice in this really pagan nation of Israel. And the Israelite king threatens to have him killed within the next 24 hours. And he's just kind of like, I'm done. And he goes away and he says to God, take me now. Like, I'm done. Kill me. Like, I'm over it. And in response, God says to him, I want you to go to Horeb, which is this mountain, 40 days journey away. So he travels for 40 days. He gets to the middle of nowhere and he goes to sleep in a cave. And the next morning he gets up. And this is what God says to him in verse 11. He says, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. God speaks to us, not usually with angels and trumpets. It would be so much easier. You know, when you're like, Lord, do I go and study? Do I get a job? Do I do this? Whatever. It'd be really easy if an angel just arrived and here's the answer. Like, we would love that. How good would that be? But generally, that is not how God speaks to us. It is not the most common form. It is generally that quiet, still voice telling us which way to go. And we can't hear a quiet and still voice if everything is loud around us. I'm not saying there can't be sound. Sometimes having a worship song on or just having that is great because it sort of shuts out the other noise. But I don't know about you, I find when I have just me and God, like in my room by myself or driving in my car or having a shower or going for a walk on the beach, it is so much easier to hear God's voice when you don't have all that stuff going on around you. I'm not saying God can't speak to you in the chaos. Of course he can. But if you're struggling to hear God's voice, go somewhere quiet. Go somewhere by yourself. Another reason we can struggle to hear from God is if we are overwhelmed. I find sometimes as Christians we have these big emotions. We might feel really angry or really hurt or really disappointed or really frustrated, and we kind of put this little Christian lid on it and a little smile on our face because we think as Christians we're meant to be good people and we're not meant to feel anger or not meant to feel hurt or whatever it is. It's okay. Emotions are not sinful in themselves. It's what we do with those emotions that can be sinful. Taking those emotions and giving them to God are the best thing you can do. I strongly encourage you, if you haven't done this before, when you have those big emotions, go to your room, shut the door, make sure no one can hear you, and cry and scream and yell at God. Tell him exactly how you're feeling. Don't edit your words. He knows what you're thinking anyway. Tell him how you're feeling. Get those emotions out. He is honestly the best counsellor you are ever going to get. He's available 24/7. He doesn't charge you $100 an hour. He's available at a moment's notice. And he knows the right things to say. He's a very good listener. So just vent to God. If you have not learnt this, I don't know how I would survive without God as my counsellor, to be able to go to him with those big emotions. Tell him what I'm feeling. Say, oh God, I don't know what to do with this situation. Do I do this or do I do that? Should I do this? But I don't know, if I do that, then this is going to happen. And then what about that? And just talk it out with him. Tell him. Work it through with him. If you're a writer, write it down or do a voice record if that helps you. Sometimes having it recorded helps sort of get it out of our heart and our mind. Pour out your heart to him. It says in Psalm 62 verse 8, trust in God at all times. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. Pour out your heart. Vent those feelings, because you're not going to be able to hear God when all that's going on. You've got to get it out. And then you're going to be able to hear God's voice. Another reason sometimes we can't hear God's voice is because we've closed our door. Isaiah 59:2 says, listen, the Lord's arm is not too weak to save you, nor is his ear too deaf to hear you call. It is your sins that have cut you off from God. Now, I want to be clear here. We all sin. We all sin every day. So I'm not just saying sin means you can't hear from God. If that was the case, no one would ever hear from God. What I'm saying is if you've got something that God has convicted you about, there's a sin that you are just unrepentantly going, nah, stuff it, I don't care. I want to keep doing this thing. I know God's telling me I should stop, but I'm doing it anyway. If you've got that kind of heart and attitude, that's like shutting the door in God's face. I don't want to hear what you have to say, God. And then guess what? You're not going to be able to hear what he has to say. And so if there's something that God has been prompting you with that you know, it's okay to say, God, I don't actually want to give up this sin and I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to change, but God, I know this is a problem. Please help me. Please change my heart. Take away my desire for this thing. Please help me. That's a very different attitude. That's like cracking the door open and saying, okay, God, I want your input in this because I know this is not a good thing in my life. Sometimes we don't hear God because we're not interested. We're worried that if we go and talk to him, he's going to tell us something that we don't want to hear. He's going to give us an instruction that we don't want, that he's going to tell us something contrary to our desires. Just like my kids not wanting to hear that it's time for bed or that it's time to come and help set the table or whatever it is. Sometimes we don't ask God because we don't want to know what he has to say. But I want to encourage you, we need to actually ask God. We need to say, God, I want to hear your voice. If we ask and keep on asking, it talks about that in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Ask and keep on asking. We need to ask God. If we ask him, we are inviting him into our situation. And we're saying, okay, God, I'm a bit nervous about what you're going to say. But I'm trusting that you are a good God and you know what is best for me and you know what is best for the people around me. Please help me, Lord. Show me. I want you to tell me what to do in this situation. We're far more likely to get an answer if we actually ask. Just like if my kids actually ask me, they're more likely to hear what I have to say afterwards. And finally, sometimes we're too busy talking to hear what God is saying. Psalm 46 verse 10 says, be still and know that I am God. This is what I think we often do. God, I need help with this situation. I don't know what to do, and should I do this or should I do that? God, please show me. And then we go off and do our own thing. Like we actually have to stop, take a few minutes and stop talking and actually listen. And usually what you find, and this is what I find, when I ask, I usually have a thought or a word or a picture pop into my mind straight away. Like if I'm actually asking and actually listening, something pops into my mind straight away. Pastor Hans Wortman, I think he's come and spoken here before with you guys. I love what he says. He says usually that first voice, that first thought is actually God. And then the next voice is us going, oh no, that couldn't be God. That was too quick. That was too easy. I don't like that. And so we sort of dismiss that first voice. I'm not saying guaranteed 100% of the time it is God the first time, but usually it actually is. It's actually God, but we dismiss it. Again, Tanya Harris says this, we say, I can't hear God's voice, but we already have. It's just that we don't like it. Because often we're like, oh, God, what do I do in this situation? This person was such an idiot and I'm so annoyed at them and, whatever. And then we're like, what should I do? And God's like, you need to apologise. Ugh, that must be the devil. Ugh, I don't want to do that. God is speaking to us and he wants to be heard. But we have to be willing to listen. We ask and then we've got to listen. Okay, could I get the band to come? Before we have a time of worship, I think it'd be really silly for me to spend a whole morning talking about hearing from God and then just send everyone home. I want to encourage you this morning to hear from God. When I said to you earlier, maybe there's a situation going on in your life, maybe with your health or your finances or a relationship or your work, I'm hoping something kind of popped into your mind of something that you've maybe been grappling with. This is our chance to hear from God. And so we're not actually going to go straight into a time of worship. The band's just going to play for about 5 minutes or so. We're just going to take some time. We're just going to take some time to talk to God, to get close to him. We've got no distractions. We've just got some beautiful worship music playing. And I just want to encourage you to focus on him. Tell him how you're feeling. Vent to him how you're feeling. Or tell him all the things you're worried about. And you like, God, I don't know if I should do option A or B or C, or maybe there's an option D I haven't even thought of. What am I meant to do? Lay it down. Say, God, this is what I've been thinking, but Lord, I'm going to let that go if that's not what you want. What do you want me to do? Repent of any sin that has been, that you know, and you'll know because he would have just put something in your heart when I talked about it. If there was something you put in your heart, say, God, forgive me. Help me to change in that area. And then actually ask him. Say, okay, God, I've told you everything. What do you want me to do? What do you think I should do? And then just be silent and listen. and that still small voice from God. And you'll know it's from God and not from the enemy, because it will line up with his word, and it will be something that brings life, not death. It'll be something that is good, not something that is evil. If you hear God's voice, then ask him, hey God, this is what you're asking me to do. Help me to do it. So let's do this now. Can I get everyone to stand? And band, I encourage you to do this too. You know, I know you're playing, you're probably slightly distracted, but you know, like, let's take some time to position ourselves to hear from God. And I want you to feel free to do what is best for you. If you want to raise your hands, if you want to move to the front and kneel, or just stand here at the front, if you want to kneel in your seat or sit, whatever it is you need to do, I want to encourage you, take this time. Tell God how you're feeling. Ask him for his wisdom and direction. And then listen, because God is speaking this morning. He knows what is best, and he wants to speak to you clearly. He wants to be heard. Let's take this time. I was just asking God if there's anything he wanted me to share this morning, particularly with those of you here today. And I just felt like he was saying there's some of you are here today who are afraid to ask God because you've asked before and maybe you felt like you didn't hear. And so you think maybe God doesn't want to speak to you, or maybe you don't have that ability to hear from him. And you're too scared to ask because you don't want to feel that sense of rejection. But I hope what I've shared today is an encouragement to you that God does want to speak to you. He does want to speak to you. And he wants to speak words of life over you. You can trust him. You can trust that the words he is speaking to you are good and full of life. Don't be afraid to ask, because he wants to speak to you today. Just as the band is worshiping too, I want to invite you up. If anyone wants some prayer, maybe about that particular situation you're praying for, and you want someone to stand with you in prayer, please come forward. I'd love to pray with you, or one of the prayer team would love to pray with you, because we have a God who wants to speak to you.